Chidi, the client is waiting outside that door. I need 5 minutes.
Adaeze, this lighting is perfect. It's golden hour inside the bathroom.
There are no photos, Chidi. There's a client.
There's always a camera somewhere.
Get out.
What Adaeze did next would end a marriage and quietly launch the biggest year of her career. If you love dramatic Nigerian stories about love, pride, marriage, and self-respect, subscribe now because this one is only getting started. None of this had happened yet. Adaeze was simply a woman falling in love. And Chidi was simply the most beautiful man she had ever seen up close. Adaeze wasn't naive, not by any stretch. She had built her event planning business from nothing, starting with small birthday parties before gradually working her way into weddings and luxury events for some of Lagos's most demanding families. She noticed everything: budgets, timelines, people, details. But somewhere between their third date and their wedding vows, she stopped noticing the one thing that mattered most. Chidi noticed himself more than he noticed her. Chidi worked in brand marketing for a major telecommunications company, the kind of job where being photogenic was practically part of the job description. And he had leaned into that requirement with his entire soul. He had polished mahogany skin, a sharp jawline photographers loved, expressive brown eyes, and a smile that looked like he had practiced it in mirrors since childhood. Adaeze loved how handsome he was. She loved how good they looked together in pictures. She loved how people stared when they walked into a room. She just didn't realize that one day she would become the person waiting for him to finish taking pictures of himself. The first real warning sign came exactly 3 days into their honeymoon. 3 days. Adaeze woke up in their beautiful hotel room in Zanzibar and reached across the bed. Empty. She sat up, confused. She assumed Chidi had gone downstairs for breakfast. Instead, she found him standing in front of the bathroom mirror, fully dressed, phone in hand, turning his head slowly from one side to the other. Click. Another picture. Click. Another angle. Adaeze? He didn't turn. We have a boat trip in 20 minutes. The morning light hits differently in this bathroom, babe. He lifted his chin slightly. I have to capture this jawline before it's gone. Gone where? She wanted to ask. But she didn't. She was newly married, and newly married women let a lot of things slide. She smiled and told herself, he's just excited. He'll settle down. Famous last words. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into a lifestyle. Chidi did not leave a mirror unchecked. Car windows, shop windows, spoons, phone screens, microwave doors, even the dark screen of the television. Everything became an opportunity for a quick glance and a slight head tilt. One evening, they were sitting in a restaurant. Adaeze watched him check his reflection in the cutlery. Once, twice, 3 times. Then a fourth. Chidi, my love. He looked at her. We've been sitting here for 20 minutes and you've checked your reflection in that spoon 4 times. His expression immediately changed. He looked genuinely wounded. Adaeze, a man must maintain himself. She sighed. You want me to just let myself go? Is that what you want? A husband nobody looks at twice? Adaeze looked at him quietly. I just want you to look at me twice. He didn't hear her. He was already checking the back of the spoon. That sentence became Chidi's answer to everything. Missed dinners? A man must maintain himself. Forgotten errands? A man must maintain himself. An entire afternoon disappearing into a barber shop for a haircut nobody could tell had happened. A man must maintain himself. By the 3rd month of their marriage, Adaeze had almost started keeping quiet just to avoid hearing it again. Then there was Chidi's skincare collection. And honestly, it was impressive. He owned more skincare products than Adaze's entire bridal party combined. Serums, moisturizers, face oils, facial rollers, clay masks, cleansers, things with names Adaeze couldn't pronounce. Every Sunday evening, their bathroom looked like a professional spa had moved in. Then one Saturday, Adaeze opened their joint account statement. She froze. One skincare order had cost more than their electricity bill for the month. She picked up the receipt. Chidi. He was lying on the couch admiring his forearm in the afternoon light. What is this? He barely looked at her. That's an investment, babe. An investment? You invest in your business. I invest in my face. Adaeze stared at the tiny jar listed on the receipt. The jar was so small she could practically hide it in her palm. She looked at Chidi, then at the receipt, then back at Chidi, and wondered what exactly she had signed up for. But the skincare wasn't even the strangest part. There were family photographs. Chidi believed pictures only counted if his angle was perfect. Eventually, Adaeze stopped asking him to simply stand still. She would just let him direct his own portrait while everyone else waited. Then came the wedding album. Months after their wedding, Adaeze opened the finished album. Something immediately felt strange. She looked closer. Chidi had privately contacted the photographer. He had requested 17 additional edits. 17. Every single edit was to his own face, not hers. His. When Adaeze asked him about it, he simply shrugged. I looked a little tired in some of them, babe. I fixed it. Adaeze stared at him. He had never asked whether she wanted anything changed. She quietly closed the album and never brought it up again. Chidi had his own philosophy about money. He called it self-investment first. In Chidi's world, a new grooming appliance could somehow become more important than the electricity bill. One week, Adaeze asked him to help cover a vendor deposit for an important wedding. 2 days later, Chidi ordered an expensive imported hair trimmer. Adaeze watched him open the package with the excitement of a child on Christmas morning. He never mentioned the vendor deposit, not once. But nothing could have prepared Adaeze for the golden hour incident. It was her biggest client event yet. A major wedding launch party for a wealthy Lagos family. A family whose name alone could make or break the next 2 years of Adaeze's business. This was the kind of event where everything had to be perfect. A reasonable husband would have arrived early. He would have greeted the client. He would have helped his wife. He would have made himself useful. Chidi arrived on time, but instead of greeting the client, he walked straight past everyone, past Adaeze, past her event team, straight into the venue bathroom, and locked the door. Because the lighting was too good to waste. He had his phone, his small mirror, and an entire plan for a personal photo shoot. Adaeze! She heard him from inside. Babe, this bathroom lighting is insane! He laughed. Wait till you see these shots. He was glowing. He was genuinely happy, as though he had just discovered the secret to life. He had not. 20 minutes later, Adaeze stood outside that bathroom. Her client was waiting. Her team was waiting. The event was already moving behind schedule. Adaeze knocked. Chidi. Nothing. She knocked again. Chidi, open this door. Nothing. Third knock. Fourth. Finally, she pushed the door open. There he was. Mid-pose, one hand beneath his chin. Phone raised. Completely unaware that he had just cost her 8 precious minutes. Adaeze didn't scream. She didn't cause a scene. Instead, she looked at him with a calmness that was somehow more frightening than anger. We need to talk later. Then she closed the door. She turned around and walked back to her client with a smile that required every remaining ounce of strength she had. Her assistant, Uche, saw everything. And unfortunately for Chidi, Uche had 2 dangerous qualities. A memory like an elephant, and a mouth like a town crier. After the event ended, Uchi could barely contain herself. She laughed so hard while telling the story that she eventually had to sit down. "Ma'am," she whispered, covering her mouth, "I have to tell everybody about this." The other staff gathered around. Some laughed. Others looked genuinely concerned. One particularly dramatic team member fanned herself. "This one has passed ordinary vanity." She shook her head. "This is something spiritual." Another staff member whispered, "Ma'am, is this a husband or a client's worst nightmare?" Uchi shook her head. "Sis, your husband nearly cost you the whole contract for a photo." By the end of the evening, Chidi had acquired a new nickname, the groomsman, who wasn't a groomsman. And Uche had already turned the bathroom incident into a story she knew she would tell for years, complete with an impression of Chidi's exact pose. That night, Adaeze returned home exhausted. She kicked off her heels. Her shoulders were heavy. Her mind was tired. Then she saw Chidi on the couch, hair freshly gelled, a mirror propped against the coffee table. He was watching himself, as if everything was perfectly normal. "Adaeze?" he said. She didn't answer. It was one bathroom. She slowly turned toward him. "It was my biggest client, Chidi. The lighting won't come around like that again, babe." He looked genuinely confused. "You understand, right?" Adaeze stared at him. "You cost me 8 minutes in front of a client who is deciding whether to trust me with her sister's wedding next. At least it was just 8 minutes." That sentence broke something inside her. Not loudly, quietly. She didn't argue. She walked into the bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time, Adaeze began doing the math. Not financial math, life math. And she didn't like the answer. Adaeze's mother was not a woman who minced words. She had raised Adaeze alone after her husband left when Adaeze was 10. Starting with one sewing machine, Mama Adaeze had built a successful tailoring business. She had no patience for foolishness, especially foolishness wearing the title of husband. For months, Adaeze had avoided telling her mother everything. "Mama, next week. Mama, work is heavy. Mama, maybe next month." But a mother's instinct cannot be postponed forever. One afternoon, Mama Adaeze simply announced, "I am coming." And she came. Mama Adaeze arrived at the house and found Chidi in the middle of the sitting room. Tripod, ring light, phone camera, skincare products. He was filming himself. On the dining table beside him were unopened bills. Mama Adaeze stood in the doorway. She watched him tilt his chin toward the camera for 30 seconds. Then she spoke. "Chidi." He jumped. "Mama." He almost knocked over the ring light. "Good afternoon. Oh, I didn't hear you come in." Clearly. She looked around. "Is this my daughter's sitting room or a television studio?" "Mama, content is important too." "Content?" "Yes. This is actually building something." Mama Adaeze pointed toward the dining table. "Building what exactly?" She pointed at the bills. "Because I don't see it building this house a light bill." Chidi swallowed. "Mama, image matters in this economy. People trust a face that's put together." Mama Adaeze stared at him. A face that's put together while the bills are falling apart. Silence. "Where is my daughter?" "Working, as usual, Mama." "She is always working." Mama Adaeze folded her arms. "And you?" She looked him directly in the eyes. "What exactly are you doing while she works?" Chidi opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Instead, he instinctively reached up and adjusted his eyebrow. Mama Adaeze watched him, then slowly put down her bag. A husband hiding in his wife's workplace. A daughter working herself thin. And a husband studying his own face. She shook her head. "I have finally run out of patience." What happened next would shock everyone, including Chidi. After Mama Adaeze left, Chidi sat quietly on the couch. For the first time in weeks, the tripod remained folded. Adaeze tried everything: gentle conversations, dinner conversations, heart-to-heart conversations. She explained partnership, she explained responsibility. She explained how his behavior affected her business. He would nod. He would promise. And then, within days, he would return to exactly the same behavior. She even created schedules for him, color-coded schedules. He admired them for 2 days, then ignored them. Eventually, Adaeze gave him an ultimatum. Chidi, I need things to change. He looked at her. I can't keep explaining to my clients why my own husband disappears at the worst possible moments. I need you to show up. Just show up. For a moment, Chidi looked serious. His eyes softened. He looked like he might finally understand. Then he said, Adaeze, you're stressing yourself for nothing, babe. He smiled. A man must maintain himself. Adaeze closed her eyes. She wanted to scream into a pillow. Instead, she simply nodded and walked away. Chidi's friend Toby knew what was happening. At first, he found it funny. One evening, Chidi was telling him about the bathroom incident. Bro, you should have seen her face when I walked out of that bathroom. He laughed. She nearly disowned me. Toby laughed too. Chidi, you're too much. Then he shook his head. But honestly, self-care is self-care, man. But eventually, even Toby noticed something. The joke wasn't funny anymore. One evening, while Chidi was talking about his marriage, he stopped mid-sentence to check his reflection in his phone. Toby stared at him. Chidi. What? I don't want to sound like your mother-in-law. He paused. But bro, this is past joke stage. Your wife's whole business almost collapsed over a bathroom mirror. Chidi waved him off. Toby, please don't join their side. Then he tilted his head toward the car window, checking his jawline again. Toby sighed. He left that conversation with a strange feeling. The feeling you get when you realize a joke has quietly become something serious. A week later, Toby showed up with an idea. Bro, hear me out. He sat down. We're not calling this vanity anymore. We're calling it a brand. Chidi looked interested. You post consistently. You build an audience. You get sponsorships. You actually make money from all this. And somewhere in the middle of all that main character energy, you show up for your wife's events. Chidi considered it. This actually sounds smart. Toby smiled. Exactly. For 5 days it worked. Chidi posted consistently. He gained followers. He even showed up on time to one of Adaze's site visits. Then day 6 came. A 4-hour barbershop session. The posting schedule disappeared. The site visit was missed. Toby eventually looked at the calendar and sighed. I really tried, bro. I really did. Meanwhile, Adaze's team refused to let the bathroom incident die. One afternoon, Uchi looked at Adaeze. Ma'am? Yes? Should we book a bathroom slot for your husband on the client's mood board this time? Everyone tried not to laugh. Adaeze gave them the tired look of a woman who had accepted that she was now comic relief in her own marriage. But beneath the laughter, something had changed. She still loved Chidi, deeply, but she was beginning to understand something. Love could not survive on beauty alone. Something had to give. Then came an ordinary Thursday. Adaeze was pregnant, her first pregnancy, and suddenly she went into early labor with complications. She was alone in the house. The pain intensified. She grabbed her phone. She called Chidi. No answer. She called again. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. Finally, she called Toby. Toby rushed over and drove her to the hospital. He kept trying Chidi's number the entire way. 40 minutes later, Chidi finally called. His voice was excited, not panicked, excited. Babe, sorry. I was in the middle of a shoot. The studio had this insane lighting rig. I couldn't just walk out. But listen, wait until you see these photos. Silence. Adaeze? Nothing. Adaeze, you there? Finally, she answered. I'm at the hospital, Chidi. Silence. The hospital? What happened? I've been trying to reach you for 40 minutes. Chidi arrived an hour later. His hair was still perfectly styled. His clothes were still immaculate. But when he entered the room, something was different. Adaeze was already resting. Her mother was beside her. Toby was there. The crisis had been handled without him. Chidi stood in the doorway. For once, he didn't know what to say. Adaeze looked at him, long and quietly. Then she looked away. She didn't scream. She didn't insult him. She didn't even cry. Something inside her had simply settled. Not anger, something quieter, more final, a decision. The next morning, Chidi found Adaeze sitting beside the window. She was already dressed. A cup of tea sat in her hands. She looked calm, too calm. Good morning, Chidi said carefully. Good morning. She looked at him. Sit down, please. He sat. We need to talk. Chidi swallowed. He expected another lecture, another conversation he could nod through, another promise he might forget. But Adaeze looked different. I've been thinking a lot. About us, about this business I've built, about what I actually need from my life. And I've made a decision. Chidi stared at her. What decision? Adaeze took a slow breath. Starting today, I'm restructuring everything. The accounts, the house, my time, all of it. Chidi looked confused. And what does that mean for me? Adaeze looked directly into his eyes. You're going to have to decide whether you're building a life with me. She paused. Or building a following for yourself. Chidi said nothing. Adaeze continued. Because I can't keep doing both anymore. And for the first time since they got married, Chidi had no clever answer. No skincare excuse. No mirror. No camera. No, a man must maintain himself. Just silence. And a woman who had finally remembered her own worth. If this story moved you, or reminded you of someone you know, type mirror in the comments and tell us which chapter hit you. The lesson from Adaeze and Chidi's story is simple. Love is more than beauty, appearance, or being seen by others. A successful marriage requires partnership, sacrifice, responsibility, and showing up for the person you promise to love. Taking care of yourself is not wrong, but when self-love becomes selfishness and your image becomes more important than the people around you, something is no longer right. Adaeze learned that loving someone does not mean losing yourself or carrying a relationship alone. Sometimes, setting boundaries is not the end of love. It is the beginning of self-respect. Never choose a beautiful image over a beautiful character, because appearances may attract people, but character is what keeps them. If you were Adaeze, would you have stayed and fought for the marriage, or would you have walked away? Tell me in the comments.